The Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs updated the media on progress made to host the indigenous and traditional leaders indaba. The indabas aim to confirm the importance of the institution of traditional leadership in South Africa. ANN 7 reporter Nomosa Pongola reports.
For the sake of improving service delivery,
the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs will host the National Indaba of Indigenous and Traditional Leaders. The department said the decision to convene the indaba follows the request by traditional leaders to have a dialogue with government and key stakeholders on matters of common interest.
It is important to know that traditional leaders are still the custodians of cultures and traditions, and most importantly, leaders of their own constituencies. Hence, the summit emphasized the importance of a better alignment between the two systems, as they will serve to enhance our goal of achieving cutting-edge service delivery to communities.
This was welcomed by the National House of Traditional Leaders.
I mean, if you look at our legislation, it calls for cooperative governance between traditional leaders and other structures of government, of which is something that has been a bit slow. The institution of traditional leaders has not been given an opportunity to evolve. We are the only institution that has not yet seen democracy. And there are people that are still working there that are not paid a single cent, that are just volunteering. You find that other traditional councils are operating from under the trees.
The House has also shared their concerns about the recent killings of women in South Africa and condemns the sharing of pictures depicting these gruesome crimes.
Maybe before one even goes into our expectations, I think we need to register our concerns regarding the brutal killing of our women and our young children, that this is un-African, it is inhuman, and it has to be rebuked with all that we have as Africans, that we've always known that our women are our treasures. Those that are circulating on social media pictures of people that have been brutally murdered, that they should desist, because I think it's inhuman to the families that have lost their loved ones to be seeing pictures that are circulating in the fashion that they are circulating. That I think we need to be human.
The first ever indaba since dawn of democracy will be held under the theme Unity in Diversity, together moving South Africa forward for an inclusive, prosperous future, focusing on land ownership, tenure rights, and radical socio-economic development.
23 years into democracy, customary law has become stagnant. However, government, working very close with traditional leaders, has vowed to resuscitate the institution of traditional leaders. Nomusa Pungula for ANN 7, Tshwane.
And for now, Deputy Cocta Minister Mr. Obed Bapela joins me in studio to discuss the traditional leaders in indaba. So thank you so much for joining us this morning right here on ANN 7. A warm welcome to you. Let's just start off by sharing more details on the traditional leaders in indaba, which is set to start off this month. So just share with us the focus of this year's indaba.
Well, the Cocta will be hosting the indigenous and traditional leaders in indaba from Sunday, 28th of May until the 2nd of June. The main aim is 4 items in the main. The issue of land ownership. What traditional leaders are asking is whether the 13% land that was called the reserves, which was handed over to Pretoria, Tshwane, at the dawn of democracy in 1994, shouldn't be directly owned by traditional communities themselves. Because currently they don't even have a common title deed for that land, and they don't even control it. It's in trust with us in the state, and they are also worried that quite a number of pockets of lands is being sold to big bidders who are building malls in the rural areas and the communities, and they do not know much as to what is happening. So it's better if the land is controlled through the traditional councils that have been established and then recognized in law. And that is a big issue that they're going to be debating and coming up with a formula, engaging government on that particular formula.
Okay. Just unpack further details also on the theme of this year's indaba, which is unity in diversity. Just talk us through the aim of this theme particularly.
Well, unity in diversity is a constitutional clause that is there, that we are building a South Africa united in its diversity. And in South Africa, we have 10 indigenous groups that were found here before colonizers arrived. And then obviously, since then, both the indigenous communities and the settled communities from Asia and Europe were forming what we called a new South African nation. But in the discussion is why the 10 indigenous groups are still far off in terms of progress, inclusiveness in the way of running governance, but also their own cultures and traditions are still being trampled upon. They are not being preserved, not promoted, and not protected, and not on the national agenda at all given times, except on Heritage Month. And they say, therefore, the South African languages, for example, the cultures and traditions are not used every day, and we speak in English, we get interviewed in English, and very rarely that you will then get to then speak in our own languages. And therefore, as a result, even our children at school, they are losing the use of the language because they now only speak English and so forth. So they then say, let's then begin to look at those particular issues, but also the issue of Ubuntu, Boto, with what is happening in the nation. They are raising concerns about the brutal killings of women and that what has happened to our humanity, Ubuntu, Boto. And therefore, if we could then bring back those cultural values and our African values, humanity might then be the winner and will indeed live in harmony as people, as human beings across the land.
You know, just recently the government has been focusing on the relationship between traditional leaders together with local government. Just talk us more about that.
Well, it's one of the biggest issues at the indaba. They are not happy with Section 81 of the Municipal Structures Act that is just giving them ceremonial role, attend council meetings. They don't have a voice in that council meetings. The decisions are being taken. They are not being consulted thorough on some of the decisions and developments that are taking place in the very traditional land that they are owning or so-called owning. And therefore they say, therefore they just want more powers. They just want us to then engage on that. It's Chapter 7 of the Constitution, which designate the role of the local government. They want it to be reviewed to then begin to create a role for them in that Chapter 7. And also Chapter 12. They are not happy with the Chapter 12 of the Constitution. They say the interim Constitution was better off. So why can't we bring those issues that were in the interim Constitution and bring them back in Chapter 12 Constitution? So that is part of the debate that is taking place.
And now, Mr. Bapela, just straying away a little bit from the traditional leaders in Indaba, land ownership has been, an agenda as of lately, across, the country. How's the department planning to deal with that?
Well, the land debates are obviously handled by the Ministry for Land and Rural Development, Minister Nkwinti. However, traditional leaders are now demanding that 13% of the land must be controlled and owned by them. But also they are filing new claims to claim more land that is ancestral, historic, and then heritage. And then they will be proving that this land once belongs to them. And obviously from 13%, we might see an increase of the percentage of the land that the traditional leaders are wanting and then wanting to be claimed before the closure in 2019. So South Africa's land question is still an issue that we need to debate. Both the land that is under the care of the state, the land that is in the traditional communities, and the land that is still owned privately. So that we could then resolve the land question once and for all in South Africa is a big issue. And the ANC conference will also be focusing on that. We hope therefore that when that issue of the land is finally resolved on policy, we'll then begin to see a movement towards a 50-50% share of the land. I know that other parties will say they want more, not even a 50-50, but we have to look at the Freedom Charter that says the land shall be shared among those who work it. So the model of the discussion by the traditional leaders is to, in pursuance of that land shall be shared among those who work it, and they want a piece and a share of that particular land, which used to be under their control, by the way.
Now, Mr. Bapela, before we close off, just talk us through whether is President Jacob Zuma expected to attend the indaba, and just talk us through more interactions which are expected to take place during the duration of the entire indaba.
Well, we are still talking to the President office for him to open the conference on Monday. We hope the talks will then be finalized before the end of today. The Deputy President has already confirmed he will be closing the conference on Friday. So we are expecting both the President and the Deputy President to be participating. We are also expecting ministers, land reform in particular. Minister Nkwinti will be there. Minister Small Business will also be attending. Minister Tourism, because cultural tourism has not been developed that much in South Africa. If you want to go for a museum of King Hintsa in the Eastern Cape, you don't even know where you want to go. If you want to go for a museum of Mshweshwe, King Mshweshwe, there's nothing. So that culture, the cultural heritage has not been developed. So they want to hear and engage the Minister of Tourism to say, what are you going to do? Mineral resource, they're also wanting to say there's so much mineral that is being discovered in the traditional land. Chrome, platinum, you look in the N4 belt going to Rustenburg, you go to Skukuni land. Is a lot of it. They want to benefit from that, to say, why are we not benefiting as communities and also as traditional leaders? The model like of Ghana, the model of Canada, they say they want to see if that model cannot be introduced in South Africa so that they can live a better life like everybody.
Well, Mr. Bebeti, thank you so much for joining us this morning right here on 8 and 7. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you with us in studio. All the best for the indaba. Well, that was the Deputy Cocta Minister, Mr. Obed Bapela, joining us in studio, just unpacking more details on the traditional leadership indaba, which is set to start off on the 28th of May until the 2nd of June this year.